Vegan, welcome home!
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nos programas offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Нашите предавания предлагат много езици. Моля вижте suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Supreme Master Jinghai joyfully present the Shining World Compassion Award to Dr. Jeanette Rowley, plus $10,000 for the Vegan Society as a humble token of helping your work. With all love and high salute for your noble efforts for animal rights. May you and all your colleagues enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Dr. Jeanette Rowley, Vegan. Human Rights or Animal Rights, Part 1 of 2. Continue watching to find out more.
Salam, righteous viewers. I'm Valeria. I just said hello in the Gagauz language. The God-trusting people of Gagauzia send joy and blissfulness to you and your loved ones. Welcome to today's program entitled Dr. Jeanette Rowley, Vegan, Human Rights or Animal Rights, Part 1 of 2, in which we have the privilege to present to you the knowledgeable vegan rights advocate of the Vegan Society UK, Dr. Jeanette Rowley. Dr. Jeanette Rowley has said, "A society that respects veganism and accommodates vegans cannot sustain and has to address entrenched prejudice against non-human animals." With a strong socio-legal background, Dr. Rowley has garnered worldwide recognition as a leading authority on veganism, human rights, animal rights, and the law. In 2012, she founded the International Vegan Rights Alliance, or IVRA, now known as the International Rights Network, or IRN, to propagate anti-speciesism. Dr. Rowley has generated vast international interest and motivation in addressing the very important subject of veganism, which corresponds to the human right to eliminate all kinds of suffering, including that of an animal. Inspired by the concept of otherness in philosophy developed by Emmanuel Levinas, Dr. Rowley strongly advocates for capitalizing on the vegans in the UK, having the protection of human rights and equality law to encourage massive shift in law and policy regulations much needed to free our animal friends from arbitrary abuse. Dr. Rowley became a vegan at a very young age. She raised vegan children, and now they are also raising vegan children.
I was around 9 years old when I became aware that the happy lambs that were jumping around in the field were what was on the plate on Sunday afternoon. And I think from that very young age, I became very aware that there was something not quite right about that. And over the years, my thoughts developed, and I became involved in animal rights as a teenager. And my veganism has grown from a very young age. I've been vegan for many decades. I've raised my children vegan, and now they've gone on to have their own vegan children.
Dr. Rowley is a very strong advocate for veganism as well as human and animal rights. She shares with us what motivates her to keep fighting for the animals.
Suffering and justice and human compassion. The main motivation is animal rights. I believe animals have got the right to live their life free from human oppression, and animal rights is a matter of justice. And, you know, the motivation just never fails, really. It's just something that's incredibly important to me. And of course, advocating for veganism is supporting animal rights, because we use law to protect vegans, and by protecting vegans, we're helping to bring about policies and practices that we have to change to make sense of talking about animal rights. We can't bring about animal rights overnight without social policies and practices to facilitate animal rights and give respect to animals.
Dr. Rowley explains the reasons why she was inspired to create the International Vegan Rights Alliance Network as a platform to advocate for animal rights.
It became very clear to me that to make sense of all the talk about animal rights, we really needed to create the kind of society that respects animals and has compassionate policies in place that give effect to animal rights. So I became aware that if we can find a way to protect vegans to live with compassion for animals, then that is a good contributor to bringing about helping develop the kind of society that we need that can support animal rights and develop the rights animals should have. So I started the International Vegan Rights Alliance in 2012 with the goal of bringing together a group of academics and vegan lawyers who were committed to this kind of change, to support vegans, to help them live with their deep convictions about animal rights, to help bring about these policy changes in society.
The International Vegan Rights Alliance serves as a launchpad for vegan rights and animal rights. Dr. Rowley talks about the activities that were being organized and the achievements made through this network.
In the beginning, what we needed was to get together to discuss the laws that we could use. In terms of human rights provisions, we needed to understand how these are interpreted in different countries around the world, and to try and understand also how the human rights provisions are represented in certain equality laws. And I think we've established that the UK is a bit of a leader in this regard. The right to freedom of conscience is applicable to vegan convictions, and this is represented in our equality law. But that's not the case around the world. So we use the human right to freedom of conscience to protect vegans, and we have annual conferences where we discuss the laws that we can use and the challenges we face. And we are having success. Lawyers around the world have had success supporting vegans with food at school, food in hospital. And in the UK, we've had success with employment cases, out-of-court settlements for vegans who've been bullied in the workplace.
The freedom of conscious human right gives a person the freedom to have a thought, point of view, or even consider a fact that can be totally independent of other people's opinion or viewpoint. Dr. Rowley gives us an example of how this human right is protected according to the law in a recent legal case that she won, as well as the deeper implications of why winning the case was so important.
You may have heard about the NatWest case, where we won an out-of-court settlement for a vegan who was verbally abused by a NatWest employee. And the benefit there isn't the tangible benefit for the vegan. What we must keep in mind is that when a vegan takes a case to law, what they're doing is representing the suffering of animals to law. They may receive a tangible benefit for themselves, but what they're doing is generating respect for animal suffering within human rights. The human right to freedom of conscience, as it protects vegans, recognises the suffering and moral standing of animals simultaneously. And the benefit of winning the NatWest case isn't so much for the vegan. NatWest has around 3,000 employees, and they are now informed in their equality and diversity training that respect for vegans is important, which generates a compassionate diversity policy in the workplace.
In the book Critical Perspectives on Veganism, Dr. Rowley wrote, "Human rights are animal rights." She will now elaborate further for us regarding the link between the rights of humans and the rights of animals.
We need to understand that the mission of modern human rights is to emancipate from suffering. That is the idea behind modern human rights. Now, given that we understand that, if human rights law then protects vegans, we have to ask why. Why does human rights law protect vegans? Because it's well known that vegans live with compassion and deep convictions for other animals. They recognise and want to live according to the fact that animals suffer. So if human rights protects vegans, then we can see that animals are beneficiaries of those protective rights that are meant to emancipate from suffering. So my argument is that if human rights is about suffering and it protects vegans, then it must reorientate to also protect animals as well from suffering. It's bizarre, really, that we have to fight for the right to live with compassion for other animals when veganism itself, I think, is a manifestation of a much wider ethical regard for animals. Nobody wants to hurt animals. Everybody cares about animals. We have over 300 international treaties for the protection of animals and the environment. And we've got lots of anti-cruelty legislation. So why is it so bizarre that vegans want the right to live with compassion for animals? It's very strange.
The High Court of the Indian state of Uttarakhand in 2018 granted all animals within the state the legal personhood status. Dr. Rowley explains why granting legal personhood status to the animal is appropriate and justifiable based on the principle that human rights are animal rights.
So in that ruling, it was basically observed that we should have compassion for other animals. They suffer, and they were regarded as having personhood in law, and that as rights holders have value in themselves. So if the value is suffering, then this is an example of how human rights are animal rights, because there again we revisit this value of suffering. The right not to suffer through arbitrary oppression or power in any way is recognised there. The basic rule that we should really acknowledge is that we all suffer. The community of species beings on this planet suffers, and that's what's really important. Protective rights are about emancipating from suffering, and on that ground, other animals are equal beneficiaries.
Supreme Master Ching Hai joyfully present the Shining World Compassion Award to Dr. Jeanette Rowley, plus $10,000 for the Vegan Society as a humble token of helping your work, with all love and high salute for your noble efforts for animal rights. May you and all your colleagues enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Supreme Master Ching Hai is deeply grateful to the beloved God for all the financial help, comfort and support to the afflicted and needy, and or any good cause over the years, as a humble vessel for His compassion and love toward His precious children. To learn more about Dr. Jeanette Rowley, please visit vegansociety.com/Jeanette-Rowley. Gentle viewers, thank you for being with us for today's program. Please join us again on Tuesday, August 10 for part 2. May divine light and sound surround you always.
Vegan, proven IQ above average.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/VE